Hey everybody, welcome. We're going to get started in just a second. You have logged into What's the Plan? I hope that's what you were hoping to log into. We got one heart emoji already, but if you're just joining us, we've got a few thousand people on. Be the first to tell us where you're coming in from. Inverness, California. I wonder if they're close to Inverness, Scotland. No, probably not very close. Thanks everybody for being here. If you're brand new, this is what we do. We introduce ourselves. We're all coming from blue states, red states, purple states, rural areas, urban areas. Everywhere we are fighting for our democracy, and we are doing it with emojis, and we are doing it by forming groups, and we're doing it by taking actions.
Shout out to, I see the Villages is in the house.
Oh, the Villages. Oh yeah.
Yep, I see some Hawaii folks. Eugene,
Haverhill,
Oregon.
Massachusetts, California, Princeton, New Jersey.
Snohomish County. What?
Fremont, Ohio, St. Albans, Vermont, Minnesota. Hopefully people are getting the sense this is everywhere. If you join this and it's the first time, you're like, ugh, is anybody doing anything? Yes, it turns out a lot of people are doing a lot of things, and you're part of that by being here. We're going to give people maybe another 15 seconds to join, and then we'll get started because we're going to have a lot of questions, I can tell. It's a big week. Linda, California, Portland, Oregon. I'm going to go through some of the new Indivisible groups, and one of my favorite parts of the week is to go through and be like, I don't know where that city is, and then you look it up, and it's often a beautiful or historic or cool place. So we'll go over some of those. I know from the feedback that we got that people feel like the chat box moves really, really, really fast. That's kind of how this goes. We're going to work on improvements, but that's the reality. So why don't we, let's see. And can everybody hear us okay? We're going to get started. Should we get started? I got a big yes. Okay, we're going to take it. Okay, thanks for the thumbs up. I love the feedback. This is us having a conversation. We're going to actually have a full-on conversation. We got about 3,000 people here. So let's get started. Welcome, 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 everybody. I've been saying this for a while, but you were joining this mass movement for democracy at a time of growth, which is great because throughout history, we know that there's not been a solution to fighting back against authoritarianism that doesn't depend on local, organized people from all walks of life. That's what works. If you read Erica Chenoweth on the 3.5% rule, if you read Timothy Snyder or Heather Cox Richardson, what we know is it's up to us. That's what we know about those who study authoritarianism. And we are in this moment that has lasted for months where new groups are joining every single day. We're here to celebrate a little bit of a accomplishment for the Indivisible movement. As of literally today, they posted there are 2,000 active local Indivisible groups all across the country. 2,000. 2,000. Our unit of activism is the group. This is how we aggregate power. This is how we wield power because we live in a democratic republic. That's what we live in. And in a democratic republic, groups of individuals can influence institutions and people. So that's what we're doing. To have 2,000 all across the country is incredible. I want to call out in the last week, we've averaged about 10 a day. So we've had around 70 new groups this week. Leah always says, you spend too much time just calling out the groups. So I'm going to try to go very quickly because we have a lot of questions. Christine from Indivisible Kingsland, Texas. I'm from rural Texas. This is past Marble Falls. If you've ever been to Austin, you drive up north. I'm from the boonies in Texas, so it really warms my heart to see some pro-democracy folks in rural or more remote areas organizing, including in deep red states. It's not enough to organize just in blue areas. It's not enough to just organize in city centers. Yes, we need that, but we need to be everywhere. We need to send the message that nobody is supporting this across the country, at least not a substantial majority. So Christine with Indivisible Kingsland, welcome to the movement. Paige with Indivisible Chattanooga. I will say last time Leah and I, it was the first time Leah and I went traveling throughout the country visiting with Indivisible groups. We went through Chattanooga for the first time. And I swear, within a couple of days of going to Chattanooga, we were looking at houses there because we were like, we should move there. It is gorgeous. It is cool. There's a great scene there. I love that Indivisible Chattanooga has started. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Kathy from Hubbard County, Indivisible. This is Nevis, Minnesota. This is nestled way up north in Minnesota. Leah and I both went to college at Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, which is more towards the south. But in Nevis, Minnesota, population 377, we have Indivisible Hubbard County. So Kathy, thanks for registering Indivisible Hubbard County. And last, Andrea from Indivisible, Temecula, California. This is a re-registration. So one of the dynamics we're seeing right now are indivisible groups that were active in 2017 and 2018 or thereabouts, became less active maybe after Trump lost in 2020, are now re-energized, are getting new people in, and are reestablishing themselves. And so this is the case with Indivisible Temecula. Andrea, thank you for registering. Leah, I realized we got started, we didn't even introduce ourselves. I'm Ezra. I'm one of the co-founders and co-executive directors of Indivisible, married to.
I'm Leah. I am the other co-founder, co-executive director of Indivisible, and we are indeed married, which is why we're like sitting so close together.
Also because this is a cramped space.
Because we're all trying to find the camera.
Indeed. Leah, do you want to go over what's the reason for these calls? What are we doing? How do we run these things?
Sure. Okay. So this is going to be mostly Q&A. We'll have some just opening thoughts, but we want the bulk of the questions or section to be Q&A. We're going to be doing upvotes of questions in the Q&A function on the toolbar below your camera screen or your video. So if you have a question, put it in there. If you see questions that you want us to answer, upvote those questions. We're going to mostly be doing the questions that are voted to the top so that we can kind of get to the things that are the most pressing for the most people. So be sure to engage with that function. You are welcome to pop your reactions in the chat box, but if you put your questions in the chat box, they will not get upvoted. So just be careful about that. Let's see, other pieces. This will be recorded. So if you miss this, if you want to watch it again, we will be posting it on YouTube. All of the links that we post in the chat to different actions, resources, etc., we will send all of those out in the follow-up email that we send for this. So if you don't catch it because the chat's going too fast, don't worry, it will be in your inbox. We are going to keep doing this as long as people find it useful. We are growing every week, so we think people find it useful. And, just a general note on kind of respect and community care. We're talking about stuff that's incredibly personal and incredibly hard and scary for a lot of people in our communities. I know that everybody here has, something that is very personal for them that is on the line right now. It can be really hard to do that, process all that. People can disagree. There can be, conflict. What we ask is that folks really try to keep the chat respectful and constructive, even if we have disagreements about strategy. So we're all here to organize together. We're all here to lift each other up.
We are all here. New people are welcome. One thing we always do is to welcome the MAGA infiltrators who are here watching everything we do because they see the power we're building. And often we'll see little clips in right-wing information ecosystem places. That's great. Hey, if you voted for Donald Trump because you wanted lower prices of eggs or bread, and suddenly you're in the midst of a fascist takeover of our federal government and you don't like that, welcome to the Indivisible movement. And if you're a MAGA infiltrator trying to find our secrets, you found us. We organize out in the open. That's what we do. That's how this works. So look forward to seeing what clips y'all take. Okay, so one thing that we do after each of these calls is a survey to ask you about some strategic question or something that we're wrestling with. The last survey was kind of meta. It was about these calls and what you like, what's going well, what you would see room for improvement around. So I just want to reflect back some of the things we heard from y'all. We got a lot of responses. I spent some time going through all of them. Things that I heard that folks appreciate, actionable guidance. You like the sense of community that comes. Somehow that guitar still works even though we bang it every single day. It's a Telecaster. It's fine. It's basically indestructible. You like the information updates that we're bringing about like what's happening in the world, which we'll cover in a sec. There's a lot of support for the Q&A function that we have, and as a reminder, you should be asking questions in the chat, or not in the chat, in the question Q&A function. I'm sorry, in the Q&A function where you can also vote. So please do that. That's what we're going to be looking at right after this to look at questions. There were some key quotes that somebody wrote in. It's cheaper than going to therapy. I don't advise you to stop going to therapy, but if you get some emotional support from coming to these, so do I. I think that's real. Being among folks who are like-minded and are focused not just on consuming the news, but focused on what we can do about it, that keeps me sane. So I get that. Somebody said that they watched one of these, that they couldn't do without these calls, and they watched it from the ER. I gotta say, that made my jaw drop. I'm very happy that this is a community that you feel is such an essential part of how you get through the week, and we aim to make it as useful as possible to folks.
And also, I hope you're feeling better.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we get an update.
I hope you're out of the air. Yeah,
Indeed.
exactly.
Now, some things, look, I like emojis. I like the heart emojis. I like the thumbs up. I like positive reinforcement, but we like constructive criticism too. We do not have all the answers, obviously. And so we got some good suggestions for how we might improve this going forward. A lot of folks like this voting system for questions, but you point out a few issues with it. For instance, it's hard to read the questions and vote while we're going through and actually answering questions. I hear that. The other problem that y'all pointed out is the earliest questions kind of benefit from being the earliest questions, and so they get the most votes. I think that's a really good point. And we'll talk with the team. Before we had submitting questions and we would kind of pick through them and see what was most prevalent. That felt like we were cherry picking a little bit or not doing our best job reflecting what was going out there, which is why we switched to the democratic system. But maybe we can do an amalgamation of both where we have some questions that are voted on. We'll work with the team to see if we can identify something there. There was a lot of desire for some broader set of action items. Now, we send these out in the newsletters every week, but we can try to do a better job of saying explicitly, here's what you can actually do this week. We don't have like a section in the program right now for that, but we can start trying to touch on that a bit more as we go through questions. Y'all want inside baseball stories and clarity about what is actually happening in the world. And then there are a few things around like technical improvements. For instance, we've been requiring that you re-register every single week. We've actually shifted that now. So it's helpful to get the feedback. We've shifted that. You should be able to register once and then it's on your calendar and then you're just registered. So we'll keep on trying to make improvements. Thank you, everybody, for submitting these responses. We really do go through those, and we're trying to build something that works for everybody here too and improve. So if there are other things that we can be doing that will make this better, let us know. Leah, any thoughts on the survey before we move on? I'm going to preview another survey once we get into the Q&A, which I'm excited about. It's about the next mass mobilization, but we'll get to that in a bit. Okay, with all that said, let me just provide a little bit of intro about the state of the world this week, and then we'll get into Q&A. What is Trump doing? What is Trump doing? He is consolidating power. It is the typical authoritarian playbook. And that means he's going after institutions that oppose him. This means universities like Columbia and Harvard. Some are fighting back, some are not. It means law firms like Paul Weiss. It means media institutions like ABC News and Washington Post and LA Times, the business community, big tech. Like, that's what he is doing. This is what authoritarians do. They look at the sources of power in society and they say, well, that's a threat to me and my power, so let's go after them. This is how we should view the latest rounds of rumors about Trump's next target. Last week and going into this week, there have been widespread rumors that Trump is going to start targeting nonprofits writ large. We don't have specifics about what exactly this will be. There was a fair amount of reporting that he was going to go after climate groups and environmental groups on Earth Day as kind of a middle finger to climate activists. That didn't materialize on Earth Day on Tuesday. There have been some rumors that he's going to launch just a much broader attack on any sort of nonprofit that might represent an interest or a threat to his power that he doesn't like. We thought that might come earlier this week. We were talking with partners, we were trying to prep as best we could, and we were bracing for impact. Those executive orders that had been rumored did not materialize, at least not yet. They might be coming today or later, and there's a specific rumor that has picked up speed that we might see evidence of literally later today, and it's Trump issuing an executive order or possibly starting an investigation to target Act Blue in some way or form. I'm just giving you everything that we have, and it's not everything because everybody's reading tea leaves now. But there are some sources that are saying Act Blue is going to be the next focus of the administration. It could come out with a statement as soon as later today. Now, Act Blue, for folks who aren't familiar, this is what many political candidates on the Democratic side use to fundraise. It's also what Indivisible uses to fundraise. If you go and click donate on Indivisible's website, it will take you to Act Blue, which processes the payments. That's all Act Blue does for us. It allows you to put in your credit card.
It's like going after Venmo.
Yeah, it's kind of like going after Venmo.
Except that it's the Venmo for facilitating payments within the Democratic and progressive ecosystem.
Exactly. So we don't know what is coming. I just want to be clear about regardless of what comes. It is our constitutional right as Americans to peacefully organize and protest. What we are doing here is not just allowed or tolerated by a democratic republic. It is foundational to us having a republic at all. Foundational. It's in our Constitution. It's not the 17th Amendment. It's the first damn amendment to the Constitution. It says, and I quote, "The right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." It protects that right. That's what the Constitution says in the first damn amendment. Indivisible will not give in to this bullying. We will not give up our constitutional rights. We will not obey and advance an authoritarian who is trying to run roughshod over the American public. What we are doing, we're organizing. We're going to keep organizing, and we're going to keep insisting on the rights that we've got. Trump and Musk, they can come after me and Leah personally. They can come at Indivisible, the organization. They can come at our partners. What they cannot do is stop this movement. We are going to peaceably assemble. We are going to petition our government. We are going to have our redress because we have a lot of grievances. We have a lot of grievances. And a lot of the American public have grievances. And you're damn right. Our elected officials are going to hear about them. The institutions that are failing us are going to hear about them. And the institutions and the leaders that are fighting on our side are going to hear from us as well. Leah, anything else about the state of the world, or should we get to Q&A?
To Q&A.
Okay, y'all. Reminder: you can ask questions in the app. You should just be able to click the Q&A button and then ask questions. The way we are going to do this, you're going to see me looking up because I put this on a screen up here. But the way I'm going to do this is look at the most top voted questions, and then we're going to go through and we'll see what we can get through over the next 45 minutes or so. That's the plan. So most upvoted question from LC with about 500 plus votes is: how do we quote unquote Tesla RFK Jr.? His plans to create a database, a registry for those with autism must be stopped. Hands off.
It's a great question. And RFK is a enormous danger to the health and well-being and rights of everybody in America. Like what he is doing is setting public health back decades. It is directly endangering our families and our kids. It is sabotaging the future cures for Alzheimer's and cancer and Parkinson's and diabetes, things that we actually depend on and our loved ones depend on. So with just the, and yes, he is particularly threatening autistic people with his like enormously dangerous and threatening comments and what he has been claiming the right to do. So with 100% agreement there, I would say, look, when we think about different targets, we're thinking about them in relation to an overall power structure. And what I think we have to first face with RFK Jr. is that not enough of the public understands that's kind of the like outsider branding that he came in with is actually just completely phony, and that he is a dangerous crank who is getting people killed. We actually have to bust through some. If you look at like the polling and the awareness of the administration, RFK Jr. actually tends to poll higher than pretty much all the other cabinet members. And that's because he has this kind of perceived outsider cross-partisan appeal that is making like inroads in places that you might not expect. And so what I would say the first step is actually just broadening public awareness that what he is trying to do is actually enormously dangerous and sabotaging kind of the fundamentals that allow us to live healthy and peaceful and safe lives in this country, rather than necessarily having like a campaign that is about kind of his personal interests. Is there anything to add there?
So tactically, what I would really recommend is this is a place for blue state folks to really step in.
Yeah.
Because what RFK represents is an extreme federal overreach. So whether you're in Maine or Illinois or California or Oregon or New Mexico, you've got a Democratic governor, a Democratic attorney general, and a Democratic state legislature. When RFK overreaches and threatens the residents of your state, what is your governor going to do? What is your attorney general going to do? What is your state legislator going to do? Frankly, I think it is going to be difficult to get Republicans in Congress or Donald Trump to directly break with RFK anytime soon. But we can limit the damage that he does by steeling ourselves where we do have power. So if I were in a blue state, I would be thinking hard about how I work with my Democratic elected officials to provide a bulwark against those attacks.
And I would say that as the attacks mount, we have to do a really intentional job of making sure people understand whose fault it is, right? Because like we have a measles epidemic in this country for the first time, or we have a measles outbreaks in this country for the first time in decades. And we have a Secretary of Health and Human Services who does not believe in vaccines and is not actually pushing a vaccine as the first and most crucial way to protect people. Those things are directly related, and we have to make sure that people understand that the ways in which their lives are getting worse under this administration are directly related to the people and policies that are being advanced.
Good deal. Next question. And Audrey, I was going to answer this later, but we're going to jump into it now. So I thought we might get a question on this, and I came here prepared to talk a bit about what our thinking is. So Audrey's question, which is the next most asked question, is, do we have a firm date in later May and June, preferably a Saturday, for the next national days of protest, and thus get the same participation as April 5th? For folks who didn't know, we had 1,300 events all across the globe on April 5th, an incredibly successful day of protest that really broke through. Audrey writes, it makes sense to have one national day of protest scheduled each month and outside of recess so that we reach the maximum number of people during these protest days. We need consistency and reliability and rhythm and lower general anxiety, and then tailor the message of each protest when we get close to the date. So Audrey, this brings up what I wanted to survey about. And if folks caught me, I went on Mad Al last night to talk about protests, and we ended as I ended. If we had more time, I would have teased a little bit more that we were thinking about it with, oh, there's a lot more to come. This is what's to come. This is what's to come. And so Leah and I, we are not the leaders of this movement. We're not the kings of Indivisible. We work with distributed movement. And so when we're trying to figure out what is the protest that is going to be the big umbrella that comes next, we want to work in consultation with Indivisibles and with other partners. So here's a pitch. I'm going to give you my best pitch. But it's not the only thing that we can do. And what I would like you all to do is follow up in the survey to come after this and tell us whether you think this is a good idea, if your own group or your own community would like to participate, or if you have concerns about it. Like raise flags and say, actually, I think it would be better to do X, Y, or Z. None of this is written in stone. We're still developing it internally and with partners. But with all that said, let me tell you the current thinking. If you've been following the news closely, you might have seen some news about June 14th. June 14th is many things. June 14th is Flag Day. June 14th is on a Saturday. June 14th also happens to be Donald Trump's birthday, 79th birthday. And the news that has been reported is that Trump is planning a big military parade in Washington, D.C. on his birthday. It's a huge waste of money. It's about his ego. It's a stupid thing to do, but that's what the news says. He's reportedly planning a big, expensive military parade in D.C. Now, I want to be clear. We all are part of this nonviolent protest movement. We should be de-escalating. We should be declining to engage with any kind of attempts at initiating physical conflict, because there is nothing that Donald Trump would like more than to crack down on peaceful protest. And he will use any kind of physical conflict as an excuse to do that. So here's the idea. Let's ruin his birthday. Let's celebrate what the flag actually stands for, which is to say no kings. Let's make clear that the opposition to his undemocratic overreach is growing and show up everywhere outside of DC. He can have his little expensive parade in DC. We're going to be literally everywhere else. That's the basic thought right now. And it's a nugget. I will not say this is fully developed. We do not have it fully developed, but this is an idea that we're thinking about. So I'm going to ask y'all. I appreciate the. I like the emojis. I got to say, it's hard to not be moved by the emojis. But I want to actually ask y'all to spend some time thinking about this. You're going to get an email tomorrow. It's going to be the follow up to this. We're going to have a survey, and I want you to share. You like it or you don't like it. Why do you like it? And if you don't like it, or you have some flags around it, or you do like it, but there's some questions you have, let us know that too. Because before this gets written in stone and before we start operationalizing it, I want to have as much input as possible. And I want to know that people show up. Because the worst possible thing to do is to call a hands-off April 5th type protest and have very few people show up. That's not the message we want to send. Leah, any other thoughts on that?
Well, I will like pull one additional thought because I was seeing some kind of comments in the chat that are kind of like why, and like what's the arc here?
Mm.
I was on a panel on Monday. Gosh, it's been a long week. With Hardy Merriman, who is a expert. I was on a panel with an expert in nonviolent protest, and one of the things, just talking about kind of academics, and one of the things that they cited was that the way in which you should think about protest as a successful tactic is, does each new protest pull in more people than the last?
Yeah.
And so one of the ways in which we're thinking about this is like, are we able to consistently build a new tactic? Are we able to flex a new muscle? Are we able to pull in a new constituency? I want to shout out, for example, everybody who's working towards May Day, where we are partnering with immigrant rights groups, where we are partnering with labor unions to try to have a big, powerful people's showing. So we want to be continuing to kind of build these muscles, pull in new people. We might have new angles, we might have new constituencies, but we have to consider, or we have to think about this as like building the ultimate strength to push harder collectively, rather than kind of like one protest is going to fix everything.
That's right. I just want to underline Mayday that we're Indivisible is not leading it because it's being led by workers unions and by immigrant rights. And Indivisible is though throwing in on this. It is on a Thursday, so there is a different dynamic there. But it is important for us not just to show up in a big way, but to show up with different constituencies. So if you're not a unionized worker, if you're not an immigrant, you got to show up. You got to show up. You have to link arms with these folks that are under threat and show up, because that's how we're going to make our next big action big too. It's going to be all of us. So I see some people saying June 14th is a long way away. You're right. We should not sit on our hands until June 14th and then show up in a big way there. We've got to find other ways to engage. The next opportunity for us to show solidarity is with these folks on May 1st, if you can. More to come on that. More to come. Thank you all for being here and engaging in the conversation, and we'll hopefully build together. Next question comes from Michelle. What's our long-term goal? If it's impeachment/removal, won't we just be stuck with JD Vance?
Well, I'll start by saying our long-term goal is to get to, well, our long-term goal is justice and a just and equitable and true democracy in America. I would say the like short-term proximate version of that we are trying to get to is a moment where our democracy is stable enough that losing election does not plunge you immediately into a fight with onrushing authoritarianism. We're not there yet. When you're asking me like, what's our goal within the next few years? What I would say is that I think we want to build the political power and the popular opposition and the societal disapproval of Trump that makes it very hard for him, that constrains his ability to get away with the things that he is doing. And then we want to beat them and have a successful electorally and have a successful transition of power, which is going to require moving a bunch of different institutions within our society in order to hold the line on what is necessary to ultimately have a successful transition of power after we have won an election. The way that I would think about our role right now is that there is a direct relationship between the kind of popular opposition that we have been building and showing in the streets, between the work that we have done to make Trump less popular, to pull new people in, to show that Americans hate what is happening and are going to be out and about and are going to be holding their own local electeds accountable, and the ways in which other actors in society interact with this regime, right? There's a relationship between the fact that the largest protest in 4 years happened, and then the next week after that, Harvard becomes the first university that says, no, we're not going to take any of your demands. We're going to push back. And if you come for us, we're going to sue you. Like that, those things are related.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that different acts of courage, of consolidation, of people pushing back are going to inspire each other. And then after that, there comes a big wave of universities organizing. And on that point, we'll come back to that in a minute. But the
Tuscaloosa?
Tuscaloosa. Oh yeah,
well, Indivisible Tuscaloosa in Alabama. I don't know if folks have seen. King Trump, wannabe King Trump, wants to go and give the commencement address at in Tuscaloosa, and they're organizing to push their university to reject right now. I think this kind of organized tactical pressure where we can make an impact is what we would like to see, and courage begets courage. That's what it looks like. I mean, my take on this, what is our goal right now? We're trying to live to fight another day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're trying to get. We're trying to get to the place where we can reclaim some amount of power through the democratic process and prevent more overreach from this administration. And that doesn't just happen in November of 2026. That happens every week. We demonstrate that institutions can and should be fighting back. But nobody wants JD Vance as president either, just to be clear. That is not our goal.
I also just want to be really clear. Like right now, Democrats literally don't have the ability to initiate impeachment and would not have the votes to move it. If we win and successfully, people successfully take office following the midterms, then we might potentially have the votes to put that on the table. Our overall assessment regarding impeachment right now is that this is not a question of does Donald Trump deserve impeachment for the many, many crimes and unconstitutional things that he has done since taking office. That's like just kind of an obvious answer. Our assessment, though, is that we're still in the stage where we need to be either driving down support for the regime and building our coalition or doing harm mitigation. Those are the things that we are prioritizing and where we campaign and how we do our own issue analysis. And impeachment is mostly going to be a process story about what various people say about impeachment, this or whereas we can direct our firepower, we can direct our focus towards things that are going to pull people away from their coalition, pull people towards us, or things that are going to result in some actual concrete harm mitigation. So we want to put our energy there.
Sorry not to extend this answer, but actually what you read, we're just going more and more, but so I agree with, obviously, with everything Leah said. There is another thing that impeachment is one tool that Democrats do not have the power to initiate on their own right now. One thing Democrats in positions of power could make clear is that this era is going to end. Trump is a lame dunk president who will not be in office in 2029. Full stop. And what is going to come next is an era of accountability. If you are a Republican in a position of authority and you have a choice to go along with the authoritarian overreach or not, if you are a law firm, if you are a university, if you are a media institution, if you are a business, and you are collaborating with the authoritarians to do unconstitutional and illegal shit, 2029 is coming. 2027 is coming even sooner. We need Democratic electeds and Democratic leaders to make clear there will be consequences, and those consequences are coming soon. This is not just all about Donald Trump. We need those institutions to understand that it's not just saving your butt to go along with the administration right now. You're actually endangering your long-term credibility and possibly your institution itself if you collaborate with these folks and what they're doing. Okay, we're finally getting to the next question. We'll try to answer faster because we've got a lot. Jeremy says, why are we not peacefully surrounding the White House on all sides at all hours with million-person sit-in until Musk and Trump are out of power? We must disrupt business as usual. We must make him feel uncomfortable where he spends most of his time and hosts people.
Yeah, I would put this in the category of a bunch of different questions that we'll get around things like general strikes or kind of mass disruption tactics. And what I would say is that I think that it is very reasonable when you are looking at the scope of the harm that is being done right now to say, why are we not going to 11 right now? Like, why is anybody behaving like this is business as usual? And also, when people say like, let's have a general strike tomorrow, what that says is that they haven't really thought through what is a general strike, how does it work, what is the preparation, et cetera, et cetera. The kinds of things that folks talk about when they talk about taking it to that level, those require enormous amounts of planning, preparation, building of muscles, building of potential. That we should just be real about the fact that those are not things that people are capable of doing right now. When we are pulling people together, when we were pulling people together for a congressional office visit in January and February, we're testing whether there is a constituency that's willing to go into a congressional office and make their voices heard to Democrats and Republicans. When we are pulling together a protest, we're testing how much appetite is there actually out there for people who are willing to show up and say no. And as we're building towards bigger events, we're testing, are more people coming with us the next time that we all throw in together? So I would encourage you to think about this in terms of how are we building the kinds of muscles for collective action and pulling more and more people along with us in order to build that broad popular opposition that's capable of creating the conditions in which institutions check this regime, in which elections check this regime, in which we're all able to push back.
Great. Joe's got a question about new media. right-leaning media sources are not factual, and podcasts that touch on politics have a much larger following than TV news outlets like MSNBC. The top 10 podcasts that touch on politics have 14 to 40 million viewers each, and 9 of those 10 shows are right-leaning. Shouldn't Indivisible be pushing Democratic elected officials and candidates to go on these new media podcasts to debunk the lies? And then there's a list of a lot of the mostly right-leaning new media podcasts that have just a ton of viewers. One thing, I think you're hitting on something very important here. And Indivisible has traditionally done a lot of work getting, coverage from traditional media, either it's cable news or the Washington Post or the New York Times or the New Yorker, that those traditional outlets. And I think that is an important piece of the pie, but it's an increasingly small piece of the pie. More and more folks are getting their news from non-political sources, from podcasts, from social media influencers, not from those traditional places where folks have gotten their news. And I think the right wing does a really good job on that front. If you look at Joe's question, you see all of the incredibly successful right wing influencers and podcasts who are out there. So I'm excited to say Indivisible has just hired and the candidate accepted a new media director, a lead for new media for us. So this is new capacity that we're bringing on in recognition of this basic reality, that it's not enough to just get traditional media coverage of what we're doing. If we're not competing for attention in the places where normal everyday Americans are getting their news, we've lost. It's game over. It doesn't matter if I get a quote in the New York Times or if Leah is featured in the Washington Post. That's not going to be enough. We need everybody, not just Indivisible national folks, but Indivisibles from across the country to be engaging these places, because normal everyday folks cannot just be influenced by Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson.
I will just note, I think that's all true, and I totally agree. And also, I do think it's worth noting that there's like a bit of an asymmetry in the audiences for conservative and liberal media. So one of the assumptions there is that there's kind of like an equal number of people who want to consume 24/7 left-wing or liberal content. And the reality is that like over multiple decades, people have tried to build things to meet that market without having the kind of commercial success that, say a Rush Limbaugh had, or that a Ben Shapiro has now. There's just like, there is a built-in market for nonstop grievance politics that doesn't quite exist the same way on the liberal side. So I do think it's worth just teasing that apart. But one of the things that I think is really important to note is like there's people who want to consume political media and they are finding their political media sources. And then there's the vast majority of people who mostly don't want to consume that much political media, but who are absorbing politics through the ostensibly apolitical things that they are interacting with, right? So if I'm thinking about whether I want another, like a left, like a liberal show with a bigger reach, or whether I want a lot of momfluencers who talk mostly about being a parent to also sometimes talk about how RFK is making their kids less safe because he is sabotaging the next flu vaccine, I want the second. I want that second way more. So we got to think about not just how do we, how does political media get out there, but how do we infuse our messages into the cultural spaces where you reach people who really don't care that much about politics, but want things to work.
I thought that was a very smart answer.
Thank you.
I think that was great. I agree. I do see a lot of love for Maya's touch though in the chat.
And we are fans of political media as well. I'm just saying that we got to reach the people. If everybody who is listening to this votes, that's great. We still have to reach the people who will not join us for a 3 p.m. chat on Thursday afternoons every week.
Indeed. Okay, next question comes from Nancy. I have seen a shift. Momentum seems to be in our favor. Is that an accurate read? I think you're picking up on the vibe shift since April 5th. I believe that's what you're picking up on, and it is real. It is real. And we said this at the time that April 5th on its own isn't we won it, it's over, but it could be an inflection point. And if you're reading the tea leaves, and that's all any of us can really do at this point, what you're seeing are things like, Chris Van Hollen going down to El Salvador, followed by folks like Maxwell Frost and Robert Garcia going down to El Salvador. You see J.B. Pritzker in this role of trying to, rally the governors from across the country and show here's what it looks like to fight back. You're seeing a lot of, I'd say, creativity from Democratic leadership, which is really what we need to see. folks trying to figure out, how can I break through? How can I make news? How can I shine a light on the fact that this is indeed a crisis? That is not where we were 3 months ago. 3 months ago, the dominant view within Democratic circles was roll over and play dead. And that's a direct quote from James Carville's op-ed in the New York Times from a couple of months ago. Roll over and play dead. Trump will take care of himself. That is not the dominant view right now. I would not go so far as to say that we have a unified opposition party in this country yet, but the insurgent fighting faction of the Democratic Party is indeed ascendant. It is ascendant. Those are the folks that are getting the attention. Those are the folks that are getting small dollar donations from around the country. Those are the folks that are being seen as actually in line with rank and file Democrats. And you can track the shift of the party over the course of February recess events to March empty chair town halls to April, the largest single day of protest in years and years. And suddenly, what's the result? Democratic members of Congress are looking for ways to plug into that positive language, and Elon Musk announces he's leaving Washington with his tail between his legs.
I wanna hammer home one specific point in there. So like last week, maybe the week before, I don't know, time is not working quite right. There was the first quarter fundraising report came out, and it indicated, it's kind of like the report on how different politicians have been doing, how they've been raising into their own different vehicles for campaigns. What was pretty consistent across a lot of the people who had standout performance is that they have been the people who are out front, who are fighting back, right? It's AOC and Bernie, it's Chris Murphy, it's Jasmine Crockett, it's Max Frost. It's the people who have been willing to really go out and take some risks to call out what is happening and find creative ways of fighting back. And I can tell you that was going around all of the group chats in DC, right? People notice that the politicians who are going out front are being rewarded, and they think, oh, how do I do that a little bit more? So as we've been talking about, like, what are the ways in which we reward fighters, but I do just want to call out, like, the actual material support of people who are putting their mouths where their money is. I don't know, metaphors running out. You know what I mean here. That actually does matter, because it signals to other people, oh, that's the direction that this is going. I got to catch up.
Yep. Okay, Suzanne asks, what is being done by Indivisibles and partner groups to market, advertise events on social media in order to reach a much broader audience? In my experience with well-educated and informed friends and neighbors, many are not aware of the protest rallies and other movement-growing events at all, or until after the fact. I imagine raising funds from just those of us on this call could go a long way to directing more resources to mass marketing.
It's a great question.
I think it's a good question.
It is a great question. And what I would say is, I think there's what we can do, and I also think there's what local Indivisible groups can do, right? Because there's the promotion that we'll do via social media of various things, and also a lot of times it's actually like, did somebody put hand printed posters up on all of the different telephone poles in your town a week before the protest that's going to actually reach the most, the broadest population of people. So I think it is true that, like, we could explore more creative ways of doing this, and as we get further into promoting the ongoing mass mobilizations, I'm sure we're going to be exploring it. But I think it's not necessarily about paid media so much as it's about creating vehicles and containers that people are invested in and want to spread within their own social networks, and then helping them come up with ways to do it.
I think about for hands off, we worked with some influencers on hands off in the lead up. We worked with a lot of organizations and partners, and we also sent out a toolkit ahead of time to help people post to social media and advertise it to their folks. But I do think when I think about what we can best do, we're not top down. Indivisible will never be top down. What we can do is provide resources, but I think our superpower is that there are 2,000 local Indivisible groups spread all around the country. And those are the ambassadors for this movement, right? Like Leah and I we can get quoted in press, or we can get some fancy influencer maybe to talk about an event. But the thing that's going to get your sister, your coworker, your colleague, or your neighbor to come out to an event is that they hear from you, that they hear something that feels real and not just packaged by national media, or they hear from some talking head. So I think we are at our best when we're providing the materials to local groups to do that outreach. I'm really just underlining what you're saying, but I don't think we've quite nailed it. I think there is more that we can do to make it easy for folks to do that outreach. And I will say, just at a tactical level, I'm a big believer in physically with posters or with billboards or with other advertisements, advertising in that way. The American public is so overwhelmed with AI generated digital slop that's put at them, like jammed down their throats through social media. It is hard to break through in that environment, but you know what is very difficult to replicate on AI or just digitally? An actual physical advertisement at the local library or the community center or the community college. That is hard to do at scale unless real people are actually engaged. And I'm very interested in how we tap into that resource, because I think it is what it separates us from the corporations, from the astroturf, from big money. Like, it is hard to buy that kind of real investment at the local level, and that's what we've got. Indivisible has this incredible resource of engaged local constituents, and I want to lean in there. I want to lean in there. So as we build towards the next big protest, please engage. Tell us what you need to reach out to your community. What would be helpful? We could do trainings on how to do it. We could produce materials that are easy to print yourself. We could create guidelines. I don't know what it is, but let's keep talking about this. I think it's going to be important headed towards June 14th or whatever the next day of protest is going to be. Daphne's next question. Okay. Next question is, oh, sorry, I skipped Jessica. Here we go. Jessica says a local Indivisible group told us that they can't participate in a 50-51 protest if it supports Palestine. They said this is a rule that comes from Indivisible National. That's weird. That's not true. I wanted to check with you about support and rules for regarding Palestine to fact check what they said. I realize that Palestine is in America and that you all focus on democracy and government here, but I'm of the belief that if we don't stand up for people being oppressed and hurt in other places, we are accepting this kind of behavior on a global level and undermining our own freedom. So we should put to rest the rumor, because that's not true, but
yeah, so we don't have guidelines along those lines in relation to Palestine or in relation to anything else that I'm aware of. And indeed, we actually have been on the record from very early in the conflict, calling for a ceasefire, calling for stopping the flow of arms to Israel for its attack on Gaza. So organizationally, I would just say, like, different Indivisibles may be in different places in terms of how much the campaigning they are doing on this and like what positions they are taking on this, but that's where Indivisible National is. At Hands Off in DC, we had multiple speakers speaking out for Gaza, speaking out for Palestine. I think we recognize that this is something that a lot of folks across our own movement and across other movements feel really strongly about and understand to be part of the, part of the broader Trump attack on human rights and dignity around the world. That's one piece. I do think it's possible that I've seen quite a lot of kind of like games of telephone, particularly on this topic. So I do just want to be clear that, I would just double check directly with that local group, because I do see sometimes these things like getting a little bit mischaracterized in the process of being shared back and forth. But just want to clarify that is not our position. And more generally, I guess what I would invite folks to think about in this moment is, I've heard from people who say, oh, this is something that is divisive. I don't, and you can make decisions about, like, is this a topic that our Facebook page is going to entertain a free flowing, like 800 comment conversation on for yourself? I also think this is a moment that calls on us to show up with people who we're not going to agree with on everything, right? Like, we're not going to agree. I'm not going to agree with some of these neocons who are, well, actually, weirdly, Bill Kristol does seem to agree with me on a bunch of things.
Bill Kristol is oddly aligned with us.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to agree with Bill Kristol. And also, I want him to show up, and I want him to bring whatever his constituency is to show up. And I want to make sure that people, like, from the left, what's the coalition, Cheney to Chomsky? You want actually a big tent in which we really are welcoming people as wherever they are, and whether we disagree with each other or not. And we want to center our values. We want to center freedom. We want to center justice. We want to center human dignity and a commitment to democracy. And we also want to invite as many people in as possible and have that big tent to defend some basic core values here, and to fight, to assemble everyone who is prepared to try to check this regime together.
I would just recommend, if folks have not read it, Anand Giridharadas' book, The Persuaders, is powerful, it is practical, and it is specifically on this challenge of how do you build a pro-democracy movement with a lot of people who don't all agree with each other on everything and might strongly disagree with each other on some issues. Do not let any outside faction try to divide you. Do not do that. You have common cause with lots of folks in this moment.
Yeah. And I'll just note, because I'm seeing a lot going on in the chat here. We have also very much condemned October 7th and attacks on independent or civilians. We have called for the release of the hostages. We really believe that we can hold our collective values and insist on human rights, insist on respect for innocent civilian life across all fronts. Like, this is not a, this is not a situation in which we are trying to we want everyone to feel welcome and valued and supported here. That means calling out very clearly the human rights violations that have been occurring in Gaza. It also just means continuing to center our values wherever we go.
Indeed. People are asking for the name of the book. It's called The Persuaders by Nan Giridardas. We'll send it in the follow-up. It's an excellent book. Earlier, last year, we did a big book club event on The Persuaders and had a great conversation with folks. So we'll send it out. Thank you for the question, Daphne. Moving on. Oh, wait, did I just undo? Sorry, y'all, I'm doing this live. This is how this works. Oh, so I skipped out because we did Jessica. So sorry. Thank you for
there's one question above.
No, we just did that one. So Daphne asks, sorry, this is my mistake. Daphne asked, Elon Musk has said that he's going to step down from politics and get back to the business of Tesla. I don't believe him for a minute. How can we make sure we're keeping up the pressure on him to get him completely out of government? I'm concerned that his announcement will make people less likely to continue doing Tesla protests. Do we need a different message? And if so, what should that message be? Great question, Daphne. Do you want to talk about our orientation towards Musk and Doge, or do you want me to?
Well, let's see. There's a lot here. So first of all, I think we should both celebrate the work, like the fact that we have elevated Elon Musk's role and the destructiveness of what he and Doge is doing is directly related to the fact that he is feeling heat and that he is claiming he's stepping back. I also think we need to be a little cautious about taking this kind of like I'm stepping back thing as a given. What we know is that he is telling investors that he's going to devote more time to Tesla. And what we know is that he seems kind of burnt out on this whole situation, right?
We also know he's a liar.
We also know he's a liar. And we also know that he has absolutely megalomaniacal ambitions as it relates to concentrating and controlling power and resources in the world. I do not think that we should for 1 second take the fact that he says he is stepping back to mean that he is not running the show and still heavily involved and still an enormous danger to all of us and our well-being. So I think we should both celebrate the fact that he is feeling the heat, and also I think we should not preemptively declare that he's out or anything along those lines. Ezra, other thoughts?
No, I think that's right. Look, I have never seen polling that is as bad as the richest man in the world is coming after your Social Security check. And whether that richest man in the world is working 5 days a week for Donald Trump or 1 day a week from Donald Trump,
right,
he is still doing damage to our republic. He is still working on behalf of the billionaire buddies and donors to Donald Trump and not behalf of the American people. So until he is gone and not actively trying to steamroll over our democracy, that will be part of the campaign. We shouldn't let up. Okay, Ian asks, last week you guys had lukewarm support for the April 19th protests. I believe Leah commented, I'm certainly paraphrasing here, that there were a variety of protests to participate in, so we're not encouraging one or the other. Part of the impact of that strategy was protests seemed to be diluted, and as a result, April 19th turned out to be of less participation than the April 5th protests. I don't think we can afford that. Each successive protest must be bigger than the previous one. May 1st has got to be huge. I hope you and every group and the Democratic Party is aligned and doing everything they can to ensure turnout is on the largest date. I think the way that you know that this is a real discussion is we just, I appreciate the criticism and I appreciate the constructive attempt to build towards something bigger. So we're all doing this together and we welcome this kind of feedback. Leah, do you want to talk about our orientation to April 19th and how we think about how we're engaging in the broader movement in this time?
Yeah, well, and I also just want to talk about what it means to be kind of the large central node within a decentralized movement led by folks on the ground in relation to this. Because, the fundamental thing is that when we're making a call around where are we going all in on a protest, we're weighing a bunch of stuff, like where are our partners, who's doing what, who's prioritizing what, where are leaders? Like these people just did a massive 3-week sprint to pull off April 5th. Are they going to be ready to turn right around and do April 19th if we say we're all in? Where's our own team? Because we had a lot of people pull all-nighters to get everything out the door for April 5th. Are we actually going to be able to land, this cycle at this time with the excellence that we want to, and are we going to be able to pull a bunch of people with us? And so in our case, and for some partner organizations, the turnaround, we didn't think that it was fair to kind of like put on the entire network a turnaround between those two things without a pretty like intensive level of consultation that we were simply not going to be able to do in the timeline between April 5th and April 19th. So what we ended up with was kind of being actively supportive of people who were doing it, but not saying like, this is the thing, everybody go all in on this because you got to push, because we just have, we got really mixed feedback from people about whether they were actually ready to turn around on that timeline and do it. And I know a bunch of people did. I was in Massachusetts where folks pushed, did a big rally on Monday. I know a bunch of people did amazing stuff. I'm actively seeing a lot of people in the chat box saying, no, April 19th was in fact as big as hands off. Awesome. The bottom line is like, we love it when we can collectively all coordinate to push on the same day. And we also think it's going to be okay if different organizing formations call for different moments. And that is the moment, right? I think that during a period where we exist in decentralized networks that are going to make some decisions collectively, some decisions locally, we've got to have a certain amount of kind of collective respect for each other's needs and ability to make decisions. And so we're going to try and continue to do the best balance that we can. Sometimes that's going to mean going all in, but we want to hold those moments for when we think we can really do it effectively versus kind of saying like, we're going to be on this cycle and we're going to go, every 2 weeks, et cetera.
The other thing I want to pull out from Ian's comment, because I do think this is a tactical place where different people can disagree, but this argument that every successive protest has to be bigger than the one before it. If you talk to again the Chenoweths or Timothy Snyders or others, that's not exactly what they would say. It is important that overall we are growing, that overall we are pulling new people in. But any individual protest day, whether that's on Earth Day or whether that's on May Day or on April 19th, if we are holding ourselves to the standard that we shouldn't do it unless we can confirm it's going to be bigger than the last one, that's going to hold us back. And I think it's going to hold us back in ways that are going to be counterproductive. Rather than saying every single day of action we hold has to be bigger than the last one, what I am curious about is who are the new people who are coming to this next day of action? Are there folks who showed up on Earth Day who didn't show up on April 5th? That's great. When it comes to May Day, this is one of the things I'm really excited about. Immigrant communities, unions, them showing up, pulling in new workers, pulling in new people. I want to build linkages with those folks. I want them to be part of this broad coalition and showing up in a big way on May Day in solidarity with these groups. It might not be as big as April 5th, and that's okay if we're pulling more people in, because any individual protest, a different set of people might participate. But on the big national, we're all doing this. This is when I want those linkages to be as strong as possible so we can show up bigger. So I really don't hold us to the standard of if we can't make it bigger than the last one, we shouldn't do it. I think it's more complex than that. We're going to have some smaller scale, some regional, some demographic focused protests, and that should hopefully feed into escalating protests at the national level. Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing that I'll point out is it's very generous of you to say that the Democratic Party would be aligned on this, but if that's not quite where we are yet. So we're working on it.
There are Democratic members who are there, and they're growing in because they're seeing the crowds. I mean, we had to say no to a lot of Democratic members of Congress who wanted to speak at the DC rally on April 5th.
And we still ran, an hour and a half over.
And we still ran an hour and a half over. But they see the crowds and they want to speak to the crowds. That's a good sign. Okay, moving on to Carla. How can we peacefully and responsibly pressure the Supreme Court to remove presidential immunity clause so we can hold presidents accountable for crimes? And in general, what power do the courts have to make him comply with court orders?
Oh boy, no hard questions or no easy questions here. Do you want to start?
Carla, I wish I had good news for you. I mean, so you're asking two questions here. How can we influence the Supreme Court directly in their actions? And two, what power does the Supreme Court or any court have to force the administration to comply? And the answer to both is not going to be super encouraging. There is one view of the court that is simply a political body. It is a political body that gets its power through different means, not through elections directly, but through the ability to persuade. So John Roberts has the ability to push society in the direction he wants to go because people generally agree that they should listen to the Supreme Court. And so one version of pushing the court is to demonstrate mass opposition at a moment where the court has to decide which way to go. I will say it's not nearly as a direct connection as we have to our own elected officials from city council up to senator. Those elected officials have to face the public on a regular basis, whereas a John Roberts, who is theoretically protecting the reputation of the court, it's more amorphous. There's not one killer moment where everybody says, I do agree or don't agree with the court. So this is why when you look at what Indivisible is doing in the action items we have, they're by and large not focused on direct pressure on the court. They are focused on where do you have leverage? Who can you actually move? Because when we talk about power, I've said this a lot, we mean a very specific thing. Power is the ability to get someone or some institution to do something they wouldn't otherwise do. We have a fair amount of power collectively to push electeds. We have much less power to push the Supreme Court. When it comes to the second part of this question, what power does the court have to push Congress or the administration to do something they wouldn't otherwise do? That's the power of persuasion. They don't have the army. They don't have a budget. They have the power of their legitimacy to say, you should do this because the Constitution says we get to tell you to do this. There is an apocryphal but famous event in American history in which Andrew Jackson famously said, but I don't think he actually said, well, the Supreme Court has made their ruling. Let's see them enforce it. Trump is effectively doing that right now. He is disappearing Americans to El Salvador. He is threatening to disappear citizens to El Salvador. And he is daring the court to do anything about it. What power does John Roberts have? I mean, he's using the power that he's got right now. They can amp it up and send more strongly worded letters and make as clear as possible that what Trump is doing is disobeying a direct court order. But at the end of the day, if Donald Trump tells the court to take a hike, the court doesn't have any unique tool to force his hand. That's what we call a constitutional crisis. And that's why Leah and I say every time we meet, we are in a constitutional crisis.
Great.
Anything else on that?
No, that's...
I want to be clear, that doesn't mean we're powerless. It just means that pressure on the court and hoping that the court is going to save us is not the best strategy. There are thousands of elected officials all across this country that have power to actually limit the harm and push back against what the administration is doing. There are institutions like we've been talking about, universities and businesses and law firms that also have the ability to push back.
Yeah.
What are they responding to? The broader climate. So we have to influence that broader climate. That's the theory right now. If the courts aren't going to save us, who can save us? Mass organized people pressure. Yeah. That's it. And again, I know I've been name dropping a lot, the Chenoweths and Timothy Snyder and Heather Cox Richardson, is because these are the experts, not just in how our particular democratic republic functions. These are the experts in how authoritarianism takes over. And what they tell us is, do not wait for somebody else to come and save you. If you wait for that, it will be too late. When institutions fall, it is up to people to organize. That's the tool we've got.
I think I would attempt to offer a slightly more nuanced interpretation of that, which is that institutions take their cues from what they think they'll have popular support around, right? And so like I said, there is a relationship between which elite institutions decide to find some ground they're comfortable on and fight, and whether they think there is a big, bold, growing popular opposition in every corner of the country that's pushing back. And so, I think the question that we really have is like, what are the different angles, avenues, levers that we use to make sure that everybody who has some relationship to the kinds of news and stories and interactions that courts, like judges on a court, lawyers, etc., hear, that help them shape their assessment of who will be behind me if I take a stand for this, or who will be behind me if I take a stand for that. Now, I'll like assign a kind of an example of this. I've seen multiple people in the chat talking about the American Association of Universities. So Harvard comes out with that, like, no, we're not going to do X and Y for the Trump administration. The next week, the American Association of Universities and Colleges comes out with a letter. It's got like 200 something universities and colleges that are on this letter defending academic freedom and kind of saying we're not going to comply in advance.
Except
with the exception, well, I mean, it has a lot of exceptions actually.
Yeah.
Like every Ivy League except Dartmouth signed, just to give you an example.
If you know anybody who went to Dartmouth,
if
or if you went to Dartmouth,
Dartmouth,
start pushing Dartmouth to sign up.
Right. So what I was going to say more specifically is, if you went to a college or university, they either signed or they did not sign.
That's
and
right.
Each of those people should be getting calls from their alumni to say either thank you for signing or what the hell, why are you not on this letter? Those calls freak people out
Yeah,
if enough
that's
of
right.
them come in, right? And so in the same way that we call our like elected officials, check whether your institution's on the letter. Ours, Carleton College, they did sign. Thank you, Carleton. We should call. We haven't done it yet.
Oh yeah, thank
But
you, Carleton. Shout out to Carleton.
yeah. So thinking about like, what are the levers, what are the institutions, what are the connections that we have for a wholesale societal mobilization that creates the conditions in which the Supreme Court says, I'm going to be on solid ground if I rule this way in forcing Trump to enforce the law.
That's right. Can we've just been having such a great time. We're going over. Can I call out a few specific, can I call out a few specific action items? We sent this in the newsletter, but just want to call it out. In addition to the university pressure, we still have some congressional recess left to go. So if you have not yet called your member of Congress or showed up at an event, there is an opportunity to push back against what are egregious cuts planned for Medicaid. $1.5 trillion is the last figure that I saw. This is through the Republicans' reconciliation bill, their big budget bill. So if you've got a Democrat, tell them, hey, we're watching. We appreciate you fighting back. If you've got a Republican, tell them we're watching what you're planning to do, cutting Medicaid in order to cut taxes for billionaires, and we don't like it. We want that everywhere this recess. We've said this already, but I'm going to underline it again. May Day. Show up on May Day. I know it's a Thursday, y'all. I know it's a Thursday. I know that makes it more complicated. If you have the ability to show up in solidarity with workers, in solidarity with immigrants who are directly threatened by this administration, this is the time. Please do. Please show up. We will be out there showing up, and Indivisible is strongly backing that protest. We've talked a little bit about Camar Abrego Garcia. We want to see Congress do everything they can to shine a light on this absolute catastrophe. The administration is, again, illegally and unconstitutionally disappearing folks to this El Salvador work camp, this prison camp. That shouldn't happen in a democratic republic. I don't know what else to say. This is egregious, and we should be furious, and we should not let this be a 1 day or 1 week or 1 month story until they're brought home, until all of these folks are given due process. This is a disaster for our republic. You don't have to get into the weeds of the specifics. This is about whether or not we have rule of law and due process in this country. Full stop.
Can I note on that, because the last question that I do want to make sure we answer is from Dawn up here about
from
the
Dawn.
specific question.
Oh, great. Yes. Okay.
So we are pushing hard for the return of Abrego Garcia, but what about all of the others who are illegally detained and deported? I feel like we're leaving them behind. This is a great question. I have asked this exact question of our team, of the folks who are kind of more in touch with the coalition that's doing a lot of the advocacy around this. My understanding of the strategy here is that there's kind of like a very specific thing that creates stronger ground for Abrego Garcia as a first step, which is that the government has admitted in court that they have absolutely no justification for having detained him in the first place, or for deporting him in the first place, as opposed to a lot of other people who are also like super obviously innocent and have been charged with absolutely nothing, and there is simply no proof of anything, but the government has not yet admitted that in court. I do just think it's worth noting, regardless of any prior convictions or anything that you have done in your past, absolutely nothing would make it legal or moral to deport people to it's not deporting, to kidnap people and take them to a third country and imprison them in a country that they have never been convicted of a crime in a torture camp that is like wildly violating their human rights. So just to be clear, like nobody deserves this no matter what. And also the specific threat, as I understand it, is if you're able to win on kind of the places where the government has admitted this, then that opens the door for pushing on people who also are very obviously, who obviously, very obviously, there was no cause to remove them from the United States to begin with.
That's right. Y'all, last time we got through the questions that got 100 votes, and this time we have failed to do that. And also, we are 10 minutes over, and I want to respect everybody's time. I did see in the survey that people filled out last week, there was some demand for an after party. In addition to possibly having some guest speakers. We will look into this. Maybe we'll experiment some. Can I just say, I so appreciate this group. I so appreciate everybody coming. I know there are thousands of people on this call every week, and there's a world in which that would be discombobulating or that would be overwhelming, and there is an overwhelming aspect to it, but mainly I just feel this incredible sense of community. And maybe it's the emojis that you're all throwing out throughout the call, but I think it's largely the questions, which are thoughtful, they're critical, they're focused on what we can do. And I'm not here just to talk to you about bad news that's out there. I'm not here to just brag about how awesome Indivisible is. We're here trying to fight for democracy and to be with a group of people who are seriously considering that and asking themselves what they can do and trying to share lessons and figure it out together. This feels so real to me, and it feels so important to me. So thank you for joining us this week. Thank you for, hopefully you'll be back next week. As we've been saying, we do this because we hope it's a service to the movement, but I gotta say, I personally want to keep doing it because I get a whole bunch out of it. So thank you for being here. If you hope you're feeling the upswing like some other folks on this call are. Hope you're feeling that this community is growing. We certainly do. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of optimism about where we're headed. As dark as everything is out there, as scary as what Trump and Musk and the Republicans are doing, we got the people, y'all. We have the people. Our challenge is just organizing them and making clear to institutions and to leaders that that's where the people are, and then they're going to follow. So thanks for being part of building that. Leah, anything to end on?
That's great.
Okay.
I can add to that.
Thank you all. Okay, we'll
Thanks,
see you
y'all.
next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Look out for the email with the survey about June 14th as a possible next day of protest, and let us know your thoughts, and we'll build together going forward. Have a good one, y'all.